For this video, I wanted to discuss the issue of leftism and correct a misconception that somehow it was, at one time, it was a benevolent movement, and now, more recently, it's lost its way. But really, it's just returning to its original center, which is a malevolent, a bad movement. And I got the idea to make this video. I just recalled a comment I left a couple weeks ago on a Glenn Greenwald video, and it's the title. It starts with, it's called the rotten rancid core of today's left. And I have to admit, I didn't actually watch much of the video. I made it to about the 6-minute part, but paused it to leave the comment, and I listened to a lot less than 6 minutes because my mind was elsewhere. As soon as I clicked on the video once I saw that title, it's like this whole topic gets me so fired up that I just wasn't even listening. It was playing. I had the sound on, but I wasn't listening. Had my mind, it was elsewhere, where it just amazes me that there's this misconception that the leftism has ever been a good thing, a good movement. Although I understand it in a way, because I used to identify as a lefty, because I had that same misconception also, and so that's why But then I studied up on the whole. I tried to figure out what is leftism. I think about these things this way, and I did some studying too, and looking up history, and learned that it had its origins, most likely, the terms left and right originate with the French Revolution of 1789, where the revolutionaries, the Jacobins, they sat to the left of the Speaker of the French Legislative Assembly, and the defenders of the monarchy of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, they sat to the right. They wanted the status quo maintained. And so then you have these lefties, the ones that sat to the left, the revolutionaries, they wanted to overturn the status quo. And yeah, admittedly, there was a lot of corruption and gluttonous concentration of filthy wealth in the hands of the aristocracy, and I'm sure there was a lot of corruption in the clergy. So it was the three main estates. The first estate was the clergy. Yeah, the clergy was the first estate, and the second estate was the aristocracy, the wealthy class. But yeah, and then the third estate was the commoners. But yeah, interestingly, the third estate, among those commoners, that included merchants, that is, capitalists. But they all were, and also along with the capitalists, had the serfs. But but they're all together. They're still the commoners. They did not have the same privileges that the clergy and the aristocracy, the titled aristocracy, including the king and queen, of course, the royalty, but also the other titled members of that second estate. But in the third estate, the commoners, they were realizing they didn't have a fair shake, which is true. They did not. But the problem is that the members of the third estate, the lefties, who ended up being the revolutionaries, or at least the ones of the third estate that did become the revolutionaries, they developed this hubris that they could never become corrupted, that they're always just going to be pure because they want to make things a more level playing field for everybody, and that's a dangerous thing, is they think that they can never become corrupted. They can never become the bad guy, like Michael Douglas's character in the movie Falling Down, where he says, he finally gets the epiphany. He goes, "I'm the bad guy."
I'm the bad guy?
But that's the thing, that never happens though in real life, at least very rarely, where they realize, maybe his character in Falling Down, Michael Douglas's character, maybe in the originally he had maybe a legitimate grievance, but then he got carried away, and he didn't realize that he could ever become the bad guy, even though he did. Until he eventually became the bad guy, until he finally came to the realization that he was. But that did not happen to the Jacobins. To the Jacobins, the French revolutionaries. They never realized. They never came to that realization. No matter how brutal they became, they're very brutal. Just cutting off people's heads, sending people to the guillotine for the slightest infraction. Just very minor things. They had send out spies, the citizen spies, out to try to find anybody that was against, that might be against them, just for the slightest little thing. And so then that ended up being paralleled back over in later on in history with leftists in the East Germany, former East Germany, where 1/3 of the population were citizen spies. And so these citizen spies would then spy on everybody, including friends and relatives, close relatives, immediate family. They spied on everybody, looking for anybody that might be against the Communist Party or the Politburo. So it was amazing, And then once the Cold War finally ended in East Germany, the wall came down, and even the Communist Party stepped down from power. The records were maintained of who were spies and who wasn't, but a lot of people did not even want to look at that because they did not want to find out that their friends and relatives maybe are on the list of spies, who are spies. But yeah, that's the real history. That's the real history of leftism, is with the French Revolution throwing people into the guillotine for just based on rumors that they might be against the revolution. They lost their heads. They got executed based on rumors. That's how ruthless the original leftists were. So when you say that, what happens to today's left? People like, when they say, they get people like in Democrats in Congress, when they're against freedom of speech, and then there's now we have the modern independent journalist who consider them lefties, and they say, why? What's going on here? Why are these Democrats are so against free speech? What happened to today's left? What's like Glenn Greenwald's title of his video, "The Rotten Rancid Core of Today's Left." What is it? What is he? I'm wondering, what is he saying? What does he mean? Today's left, it's always been rotten. It's nothing new. It's always been rotten to the core. It's from the very beginning of leftism. Now, of course, I'm not saying it's a false choice. I'm not saying now because I'm against leftism, I'm going to be supporting the status quo, and I'm not, I'm not supporting the right political. I'm not a right winger. I'm neither left nor right. It's a false choice. But we're stuck in this French Revolution mindset where we only can choose one or the other. I was going to read the comment I left here on that video, I mentioned the rotten, rancid core of today's left, a Glenn Greenwald video from a couple weeks ago. Here is what I wrote. What happened to the Western left? They gained the reins of power. That's what happened. From the McCarthy era through the Vietnam War era, the left was the underdog and largely oblivious to the inherent nefarious nature of leftism. Because they were oblivious, the underdog left could maintain a blissful, ignorant take on leftism. But since then, a 180-degree turn has occurred whereby the left has taken control of the deep state and revealed the genuine nature of the left. What you're referring to as the left from America's past was really an illusion. A much more genuine characterization of the left can be found in Stalin's Gulag and his political purges, along with the former East Germany's Stasi thug political police, who relied on 1/3 of East German citizens to act as citizen spies on the other 2/3 of the population, ratting out anyone who dared criticize the Politburo. The Soviet Bloc politics, that was genuine leftism, which is today's woke left takes on the characteristics, which is why today's woke left takes on the characteristics of the despotic Soviet era politics. That's the way the left has always behaved. And the flower children hippies of the late 60s weren't politically left or right either. They were something altogether different, much closer to being a religious movement than a political movement. The terms left and right likely originate with the French Revolution of 1789, where the Jacobins, who wanted to overthrow the monarchy, sat to the left of the Speaker of the French Legislative Assembly, while the monarchy defenders sat to the Speaker's right. But once the Jacobins got in hold of power, they were utterly brutal. It's a common misconception that only the wealthiest French men and women lost their heads to the guillotine during the Revolution's reign of terror. A vast number of commoners lost their heads also, often based solely on the word of one of the many citizen spies ratting them out for the slightest infraction, such as merely saying a kind word about the defunct monarchy. That's all it could take, just a kind word about the defunct monarchy during that reign of terror. That could be cause of death. That'd be a death penalty. Seriously. That's all it could take to get the death penalty. Just say a kind word about the defunct monarchy, about Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. That could get you the death penalty. That's what the original leftists did. That's what they were all about. It was never a benevolent movement. There was something fundamentally wrong with leftism. But like I said, you don't have to be a right-winger just to be against leftism. I'll return here against what I wrote here. Such citizen spying resulted in merciless repercussions for political dissidents and was later to be replicated by the leftist East German government, which I talked about. This is citizen spying. This last paragraph here. So the earlier era Western leftists were really rather naive. So that's like the modern leftists. I'm saying were rather naive and clueless about the true nature of leftism as it was being practiced authentically in the Soviet Union with its forced labor political prison camps known as gulags and East German Stasi hunting down political dissidents. What is going on now in the US and other Western nations is merely a dose of reality of what real leftism is all about and should be a wake-up call to distance ourselves from it and not be a call to make America left again. So yeah, we never should have been associated leftism with progressivism. I mean, I still think progressive, and that's just Now that's just a term that means making the world a better place. So yeah, I'll still call myself a progressive because I'm still trying to make the world a better place, and I'm against extreme concentrations of wealth into a few hands. I'm still a tree hugger. I love nature. I like to see nature preserved. But I'm not a leftist. I don't want to have anything to do with leftism after realizing what its origins are in such a despotic, totalitarian way of thinking, and that has gone throughout history from the French Revolution to today. It's always been the way it is. But now we're just realizing, or I mean, the people should be realize. Independent journalists and activists, upon seeing what the so-called Leg Squad is doing to try to squelch free speech, the Democrats, when they're trying to squelch free speech and impose their woke ideology on and not allowing any variation from the woke dogma in politics and schools, that's they should realize that they're showing the true nature of what leftism is all about. It's not like leftism has somehow been allowed to turn rotten. No, it's always been rotten. It's always been rotten to its rancid core. This is nothing new. It's always been that way since the beginning of the leftist movement. And so you might wonder, well, what are we supposed to do? Well, let's try to find ways to make the world a better place, but without imposing these draconian measures that give anybody or any government or organization, whether it's a government or a corporation, don't give up too much power. That's one thing. That's where the Bill of Rights. That's why the Bill of Rights needs to be protected so much, and that's why it's so good. Is it gives it gives power to the people and takes away power from the megalomaniacs that tend to gravitate to positions of power in government and in business too, in the business world. And just to make, you need to make sure that the power is left with the people. I have a lot more confidence in the people and the common folk and the plebs. It needs to be government of, by, and for the people. But we can always, if we decide to, for instance, I think we can have communal ownership of some things. I think that's not such a bad idea. We can have communal ownership without it being a Marxist communal, because communism, that's just a word for, derives its origin from communal, communism. So, I mean, people, I don't understand why people can't seem to differentiate the terms communism in principle and the Communist Party that is almost always Marxist Communist Party. And so I'm very much against communist parties that are almost invariably, because they're almost invariably Marxist. I am against Marxism, because Marxism is a type of leftism, and among other things. There's plenty of reasons to be against Marxism, just not just because it's leftist, but there's plenty of other reasons that I've gone into in other videos. But yeah, I'm against Marxism, but again, like communism can be considered just a principle, but people are just so reflexively, when they hear the word communism and communist, they so reflexively associate it with Marxism that I try to avoid even using it, because people don't seem to be able to psychologically disassociate the term from the Marxist Party. But for some reason, they are able to separate the principle of democracy from the Democratic Party. And so, I mean, most people, they support democracy, but a lot of people that support democracy are against the Democratic Party. They're able to, they're able to distinguish between the two, democracy and the Democratic Party. Two different things entirely. The principle of democracy, Democratic Party. There's also the principle of communism and the Communist Party. Two completely different things. But yeah, I mean, I think that I would like. I think it could work for something like medical devices and medicines that are currently experiencing price gouges. Maybe those should be communally owned in some way, shape, or form. Either is like in form of a co-op, or public government ownerships. Whatever it takes. I mean, it's more of a utility. I think medicine. I'm not saying banning a capitalist from making medical devices and pharmaceuticals. It's just I think that in certain circumstances it seems to be necessary due to problems with monopoly profits seem to keep recurring over and over again in the case of medicine. And as a result, we have this huge runaway prices and price gouging in medicine. So I think maybe it should be more of a public, in some way, shape, or form, treated like a utility. So it doesn't. The governments can still own the means of production for something like medicine without it being a Marxist communal ownership. It's a communal ownership, but it's not. Without it being Marxist. That can be done. It certainly can. I mean, the government printing office, that's been existed, I think, for close to 100 years, if not longer. The U.S. government printing office. I think now they call it the government publication office. It's they one of their means of production of a bunch of books and pamphlets and brochures. It's worked fine. It's and it just there's no price gouging. You can buy books at a reasonable price. Like from the Department of Agriculture, puts out books about seeds, and soil, trees, and they're perfectly works perfectly fine. It can be done. Could be. So why can't it be done with medicines, drugs, and medical devices? Now, I think look at like Hayek. Even Hayek admitted that utilities are perhaps best owned by the government. I think that's wise. And then who's Hayek? You might wonder. Well, Hayek he wrote the Road to Serfdom, which is considered a foundational text to modern day free market economics theory. People like the Ludwig von Mises Institute, they really praise that book. And I was one of the few people that actually read at least part of it. I haven't read the whole thing by any measure, but it's often praised by people, what we call the political right, free market economics people. And in that, I remember I read there's a passage where he said, very grudgingly admits that maybe utilities are best owned by the government, or government owned. So that's even Hayek said so. And so if we're considering, people if they need these medicines to just to stay alive or maintain their health, it seems like that's more of a utility, like the clean water supply. Yeah, that's utility. Everybody admits that. So why can't we consider medicine, at least the really vital medicines that people need to stay alive, maintain their health? Why can't you consider that utility? It seems like it's a utility value utility there. Yeah, I think so. So maybe the government needs to own the means of production of medicines, and I don't think we're gonna, by doing that, all of a sudden we're gonna fall into a Marxist communist tyranny just because the government owns the means of production of medicines and medical devices. Actually, that would increase freedom, I believe, because it would increase the economic freedom of people who depend on those of those medicines and medical devices, so that they would have more money to freely spend. They wouldn't have to take on extra jobs just to pay for their medicines, and their medical insurance. So their economic freedom would be enhanced. I think Ron Paul said the economic freedom is freedom. So to some extent, I agree. So wouldn't that improve your economic freedom if the government owned the means of production of drugs and medical devices? I think it would. That would improve freedom, not take it away. So yeah, there's all sorts of options outside of the left-right dyad that we can engage in to make the world a better place, to be progressives. We need to get out of this rut of the French Revolution mindset that we seem to be stuck in. And the people with this progressive mindset, I would implore them to abandon the whole leftist ideology altogether. Look at history. Look at who true leftists are. Stalin was a real leftist. Chairman Mao was a real leftist. I mean, look at Chairman Mao. He made all the citizens wear uniforms. Citizen uniforms. These drab, whatever olive green or gray, but they're all the same. That's like the opposite of what the hippies were. So yeah, the hippies were not but necessarily leftists. I don't know, maybe some of them were. I suppose some of them probably were leftists. But they're not inherently leftist. The hippies. They were free spirits that went outside of that leftist thinking of Chairman Mao, who was trying to force everybody into these citizen uniforms, to force them into this very narrow ideology of Marxism. But yeah, the hippies, they were really more of an opposite of leftism than right-wingism. The hippies were. I think I find it interesting that the hippie movement, it's the free spirit. Now you look at China, they really, the CCP, they claim they're definitely Marxist, and they claim to also have maintained some Chinese elements, but they really seem to have abandoned the CCP have abandoned Taoism, Lao Tzu. That was very much more of a go with the flow. There's a lot of warmth in that, but with the Marxism of the CCP, it's very cold, controlling, micromanaging its citizens, and not allowing them any freedom. Any freedom outside of what they allow, so that they're really like kept citizens of the nation. They're like a kept woman who's controlling benefactor. Lets her have everything, all the luxuries she wants, except for her freedom. And that's what like this. So it's a kept woman with a control freak who keep her. And so, yeah, if without your freedom, what do you have? That's the thing is, yeah, with problem with Marxism and leftism is there's no freedom outside of what those in government decide the freedom you have can have, and that's not really any freedom. It's within their confines of very narrow confines of what you're allowed and not allowed to, and that's what we're coming into with these 15-minute cities. Just the walls are closing in, whereby we can only, in this, along with the social credit system. And so that's not what life is all about. It's not life. It's not about being a cog in a machine. We should not be treated as mere cogs and pawns in somebody's Hegelian narrow model of what it means to be a member of society, of what it means to be human. We should be allowed to paint our own lives on the canvas of the earth, and not just be not be allowed to find our own way. But that's what true leftism is. It's about they're telling you who you are, what your purpose is, and that's it. You're not allowed to go outside of what these megalomaniacs decide your life is, what your life is all about. And that I'm against that. I think you should be allowed to find your own way in life. Not let somebody else decide what your purpose is in life. But that's what the Marxists and leftists do. They're just a bunch of control freaks that treat the citizens as kept citizens. They just end up, people are treated as pawns, just to meet the megalomaniacal needs of the dictators. So yeah, that's why I'm against leftism. But so that's, yeah, I would implore today's modern leftists just abandon it. It's never been a good thing. Leftism, please stop trying to say, oh, we just need to fix it. There's nothing progressive about leftism. It's not. It's regressive. It's inherently flawed. Something's wrong with it. And just go be progressive. If you want to be progressive, just look for ways to make the world a better place. Yes, but it actually gives people freedom to find their own way in life. And that's what we need to. That's what we need to do. Just let people find their own way, and let them know, and including finding a way. If people are inherently good, which I believe they are, they're gonna, as part of finding that way, they're gonna try to find ways to help others. And they're trying to build a society where people have more genuine freedom, including economic freedom, and if that means a government owning the production of medical pharmaceuticals and medical devices, well, then let's do that. Absolutely. But only because it helps economic freedom of the individual, if their fellow citizens to find their own way in life. Only then, that's the only reason to do it, is so that we can help others live freely. That's the only way. Yeah, that's the only reason we should be having that public ownership of such things as manufacture of medical devices, and that's why we have public ownership of roads, for instance. So we have the freedom to go wherever we want. Go down the freedom of the open road, public roads, freedom of the open public road. We can decide where do we want to go. That's why we have public ownership, is to help for the individual freedom. So it's like a collectivism for the sake of individualism. Yeah, that's what I support. Not collectivism for the sake of collectivism, which is what Marxism, leftism is all about. It's all about creating a real-life Borg collective that we have to be assimilated into in order to fit this Hegelian model of universal history, whatever the heck that means. So these esoteric ideals of Hegelian philosophy that makes no sense to me. There's no truthiness in it. It's a bunch of fiction, as far as I'm concerned. But we're supposed to live our lives according to some fiction written by this Hegel guy. I don't think that's right. We should be able to find our own way. We should be able to find our own ways in life, not be forced into some, trying to force these people in power, or these megalomaniacs that try to force a square peg in a round hole. It's like when Mao put all the citizens in these citizen uniforms. It's trying to fit it some. They're listening to these narrow-minded control freaks. That's what leftism does. Helps these control freaks compensate for some feelings of inadequacy in their lives. And I don't agree with that. I don't think that's a good thing. That's a bad thing. That's not progressive. That's regressive. That's try to find a progressive ideology that helps people have true individual freedom. Okay, I said enough. That's all for this discussion this evening. If you're still watching, it's been kind of a long one, but if you're still watching and listening, thanks for watching.